Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the next episode of TILLY. I'm your host, MArisa Zeppieri of A lot of you already know me as LupusChick. TILLY is brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of New England. It is a weekly episodic series. You can watch it every Tuesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern, live on the Lupus Foundation of New England's Facebook and also on LupusChick's Facebook. Tonight, I am really excited to bring in an incredible woman, speaker, author, nonprofit founder. She has an amazing new book, and she has a lot of other, I call her a multi-hyphenate, so a lot of other things after her name that she will share with you, Lisa Honig Buksbaum. And we're going to be talking about her new book. So stay tuned. It's going to be a great episode. So Lisa, I just want to thank you so much for being here. And before we go into a couple of questions that I have for you, I would really appreciate it if you could just give everyone a quick overview about you.
Great. So I'm a passionary, a person of great action and passion. And I started my career in advertising and marketing in the center of the universe, New York City. And then there were 3 experiences that happened in my family in a very short period of time that led me to launch a global not-for-profit called Soaring Words. And I feel like when people meet like-minded people, a soul-to-soul connection, as MArisa and I share, I was so thrilled when she invited me to meet with your community because you are my tribe.
Thank you. So yes, Soaring Words is your nonprofit, and I definitely want to talk a little bit about that later. And then Soaring Into Strength is your memoir debut that is coming out. So before we actually get into Soaring Words and the things that brought that nonprofit about, I would love for you to share, if you could just tell us, I know from reading your book, just a little bit about your life before, like growing up, what your family was like, your career. I just sort of want to learn about life before the nonprofit.
Excellent. So great question. I was a New Jersey girl. That's where I grew up, and a bossy big sister. I sang songs, strumming on my guitar. I wrote. I dreamed of life in the big city. And then I met the love of my life on the dance floor. And then we found out that we actually were next door neighbors in the same apartment building, which is such a New York City story. I began my career working in advertising agencies, the leading advertising agencies in the world. And then I left to start my own ad agency, which became an award-winning boutique and ad agency shortly after my first child was 1 year old. So that's the backstory.
So, okay, so in your book, Soaring Into Strength, you talk about these 3 experiences with death and illness during this really short 10-month period that ultimately changed your life and changed the course of your life and led you to create this nonprofit, Soaring Words. So because our LupusChick community deals so much with chronic illness personally, or the people in our community are caregivers or friends to someone that has a chronic illness, can you share more about those 3 specific experiences, how they affected you and just changed you as a person and ultimately your career path?
Sure. So first of all, I'm really excited to be here with you, MArisa, and with the whole community. And for everyone listening, you are the reason that I wrote my book, Soaring Into Strength, Love Transcends Pain. And I wrote this book to remind you that strength and greatness resides within you, even regardless of whatever circumstances are happening in your life. And it's so easy to lose touch with that reality, especially in the midst of challenges. And I know a little bit about challenges, whether you or someone you love is grappling with grief or illness or trauma or setbacks. Because when this happens, the whole family, yourself, and your family and friends, and then your chosen family, your neighbors and your coworkers, the whole constellation is affected by what happens. And these are the people, the chosen family, that step up and meet you and do what's needed to be done. And this is what I experienced in my own life in 1998, when 3 experiences with death and illness, I call them the trifecta of trauma, happened in my family over a very short 10-month period. My younger brother, Gary, my only sibling, died suddenly of an asthma-induced heart attack. And I got the phone call at 4 o'clock in the morning. 2 hours later, I was standing on the doorstep of my parents' home to tell them the terrible news. 5 weeks after that, my father, my beloved daddy, Charlie, he had his second bout of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, the worst kind and the worst stage. And when I looked in my daddy's eyes, I saw that he wanted to live, that he wanted to fight. And the doctors told me and my mom, he's a goner, get his affairs in order. It's impossible for him to live. Talk about taking away hope. Talk about taking away hope. That was really horrifying. But my dad was resilient and he wanted to fight, and he did. In fact, he lived cancer-free for 19 years. And then 10 months after Gary died, my oldest son became catastrophically ill, and he was heavily medicated and very sick for 4 long months. So what began as a personal journey as a mom on a mission became my calling one day when early morning, as the sun was coming up, I was walking along the beach because the head of pediatric neurology told us, get out of New York City and go be somewhere tranquil, somewhere calm, get out of the hustle bustle of the city. So I was crying and singing and praying because that was the only time that I wasn't there to be the rock as the caregiver for my young son. And the name and the feeling, soaring words, came to me right from above. And I knew that it was a calling. I knew that my life's purpose had been given to me, and I knew what I needed to do. So in a sense, this trifecta of trauma actually altered the trajectory of my life and led me to live my life purpose.
So when I read your book, there's so many incredible themes in it, but one of them is you just have this sort of innate spirit of being an amazing caregiver. It was to your parents, to your brother, to your children, and through the nonprofit, through other people that are dealing with chronic illness. So can you talk to us for a minute about caregiving?
Through all of my family's personal experiences with serious and catastrophic and chronic illness, starting from a young age when my baby brother and only sibling had serious asthma and he was tormented terribly. So from a very young age, I was that bossy older sister, that second mom, but also in a sense, an emotional caregiver as part of the support team. And as you all know, that's what it's often needed, that we need a whole team to support us. And for those of you on the call who are caregiving, you know that it's more than a one-person job. So whatever we did, it was always to bolster the physical and the emotional well-being of our loved one and ourselves. So that's why I've created many caring for yourself as a caregiver workshops and have spoken at many conferences about this topic because it's so near to my heart. It's so essential. And what I want to say to all of you is that it's also essential to learn how to practice self-care rituals so that we actually have the stamina and the fortitude physically and emotionally to continue to care for our loved ones and ourselves. And I don't mean this in a didactic, like, telling you what to do, because I know that as a caregiver, everyone feels the need and and that they have the wherewithal to tell you exactly what you should do. But we know that that's often well-intentioned, but very hurtful. But in terms of caregiving, throughout my Soaring Words journey, I've met so many inspiring children and teens and families and caregivers and healthcare professionals who I've hugged and laughed and cried with and just shared those moments of authenticity with. And those stories have inspired me to come forward and share my stories that will hopefully inspire you on your caregiving journey.
So you mentioned Soaring Words and how caregiving is ultimately a huge part of that. I want to dig into Soaring Words for a few minutes. So you mentioned briefly about how the idea came to you when you were on the beach and the doctor told you to get out of the craziness of New York City for a little while. But tell us more about the nonprofit and specifically, because I love this part of your book, how you go into these hospitals, you're actually working with children that are, really ill, and they're spending a good portion of their life in treatment and in the hospital. And just tell us more about what you do and just what that experience has been like to be able to touch so many lives, like one-on-one?
Sure. So the morning after my 40th birthday, I was so excited because my parents and husband made me a nice party with my closest friends and family. And I was really happy because no one was sick and no one had died. It was like, yay. But a little bit of trepidation. And I promised myself that the morning after my 40th birthday, I would start working on the Soaring Words business plan. So I went to the gym and I was walking back. And sure enough, just in case I needed a sign or, a miraculous notice, like you're doing the right thing. As I was walking next to the Museum of Natural History, it's a story in the book, I started to cry because it's like, okay, girlfriend, you got it. This is it. Like you're really doing it. And I miss my brother so much. And I was crying, having a little pity party as I was race walking home to get the kids up and dressed and ready for school. And a perfectly shaped red heart was right there on the sidewalk. And the heart is the logo for Soaring Words. And that was just such a beautiful confirmation that sometimes even when our loved ones are no longer physically with us, they're always with us in the times that we need it the most. So I started working on the business plan, and it's been an exhilarating journey. Since 2000, I've dedicated my time, my creativity, my talent, my passion to really launching and growing Soaring Words. And it's a global not-for-profit, and the mission is to inspire children and families and adults and seniors and healthcare professionals and caregivers to take active roles in your self-healing. And those are a nice string of words, but to take an active role in your self-healing, it means that when you see a man or woman in a white lab coat, you don't just give it up. You tell them who you are, you share your narrative, what's important to you, what your values are, and you don't lose yourself. It's a big fancy scientific word called reification. When the person becomes merged with the diagnosis, when the person becomes merged with the illness. And it's very easy to lose our identity, to lose our personality, to lose our spirit and our source of joy, because this is hard, but it doesn't always have to be hard. And when these three experiences with death and illness happened in my family, I was determined, I was hell-bent that my life was not going to be defined by the loss. My life was not going to be defined by the sadness. That when people saw me, and maybe they were talking about their siblings and how everyone was coming home for Thanksgiving, or they were talking about all these things that, at this time wasn't exactly my happy topic. I wanted them to keep talking. I wanted them to mention my brother's name and what was going on and not pretend like nothing was going on, because that's also really painful when people just pretend you're invisible, or there's an 800-pound elephant in the room. So I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know, but the purpose of Soaring Words was to be real and to give people the tools that they could use to live their best lives, despite of what was going on with setbacks or challenges, despite chronic illness, despite mental illness. So the idea was to keep giving people the things that they could use, and they could see immediate changes in their thoughts, in their physiology, in their attitude, and in the way they could interact with other people. So the Soaring Into Strength Positive Health workshops and the events that we created are designed to teach you how to experience greater gratitude and resilience, more tender self-compassion, and optimism and altruism and joy based on the latest positive psychology concepts. And the thing that makes it really unique is that no other organization has pulled together the leading experts in the world in positive psychology who are thought leaders, but they're also really cool and compassionate and compelling human beings. They don't talk in 25-syllable medical jargon. They're just real, and they really want to connect with you and millions of other people to help you learn what they've spent their careers, decades, studying resilience or gratitude or hopefulness, and to share that with as many people as possible. So we've presented at 16 scientific conferences around the world. And when I started out, I was running so fast We started out with a couple of hospitals, then we grew to 196 hospitals around the world. And as of this year, 2022, we've embraced more than 500,000 people who are grappling with chronic illness or serious illness or just challenges, and said to them, hey, listen to this workshop or come to this event, and you could learn a couple of things that might help you flourish instead of always feeling isolated or diminished. And the last thing I wanted to say is something that really has been a foundational idea is this notion of paying it forward. That when I started out, people like, Lisa, why are you asking ill children in the hospital to help other kids? Why are you asking ill kids to do anything? You should be giving them teddy bears and trips to Disneyland and just stuff. Just give them a lot of gifts. And those distractionary gifts are important. I'm not telling anyone not to do something to remind an ill child in the hospital that you're thinking of them and sending them love. But what's more helpful, in my experience, and the science backs it up, is when you invite a child or an adult of any age to do something kind or altruistic for another person, like write a soaring superhero message or artwork, or make a soaring haiku, or do a soaring constellation message. We have like 50 of these activities that we created over the years. When you take a few minutes to do something kind, it does a lot of things. It mitigates, it just shatters your isolation. It shatters that tight hold that the illness has on you. It reminds you, that you're funny, you're creative, you're brilliant, you're clever, you're a good artist, or that you just have a big heart. And once you are reminded of that, then it's magic, because it has a transformative impact on the giver, you, and the recipient. And then we inspire all of the people who are the recipients to pay it forward and create the same thing for the next person. Could be their nurse or doctor or their family member or teacher, or just a friend, or for an anonymous person. So that's kind of been the trajectory and the growth. And that's why our theme line for Soaring Words is the power to heal, because it recognizes that strength and common humanity is inside of each person. And that when you recognize this power within yourself, and then you start to look around and you see a kind word from a nurse or a doctor or a stranger on the bus, and you see the common humanity in other people, then that isolation goes down and that gratitude goes way up. And then we can swim in a sea of gratitude and kindness and goodness in the midst of everyday challenges. And it's a real paradigm shift. So that's what I've done the last 22 years.
It's amazing. The sheer number of people that you've reached is incredible. And I love the intertwining of the positive psychology and just getting those people like me that are ill and have a diagnosis involved in something that takes us out of the mindset of that we're sick. That can be very negative and very depressing, and you can sort of go down this spiral. So I love all different activities that I got to read about that you do in Soaring Words. And one thing that was sort of threaded through your memoir is your faith. And particularly, that's definitely something that has helped me through the years of being sick. And so you share your Jewish faith and how you've clung to it in so many of these traumatic instances that you talked about, and just things in life, whether there were these major instances or things that were small, and just sort of the role that your faith has played. If you could just tell us a little bit about how it's shaped you and how it's shaped your outlook as you're going through different seasons and times in your life. I think a lot of people in our community would be able to relate to that.
So MArisa, first of all, I just want to say that I do practice and live my Jewish faith, but I don't wear it on my sleeve. And the way that I mainly practice it is that the divinity or life force in me, I see that in everyone. And I guess in that way, I'm a humanist in that I love everyone. And one of the things I loved so much about your book was I really got to know and love your Nana, your grandma, and to see how her faith and your mother reading you passages from the Bible when you were laid up in the hospital for that first year right after the truck accident. It was so beautiful to see your faith take root as a seedling and blossom and grow. So what I want to say is to everyone that when I'm talking about faith, I'm talking about religion with a lowercase r. I'm talking about spirituality. And for some people, that could be music, being in a community, which is called collective effervescence. So it could be a church or a synagogue or a mosque, but it could just be a community chorus, like a neighborhood group or a book group, just coming together in community with shared values and good intentions and recognizing that common humanity. This is something that's known to really have a positive cascading impact on your well-being. And the reason I wrote this book, Soaring Into Strength, Love Transcends Pain, is because I want you to know that you're not alone. No matter what challenges you're facing in your life or the lives of the people closest to you, I want you to remember that you have inner resources and that you can still connect to that still small voice that resides at your core. And it's a voice that if you let it, it can help you to find peace and strength, not just to survive, but even to thrive. Now, some people call this voice God, others call it life force, but for me, it's choosing to live in gratitude, even when things are overwhelming. So there's so many small acts of kindness that can remind us that we're not alone. And since I've been a young girl, I gravitated to spirituality. And like I was a candy striper because I wanted to help people in the hospital. And I really enjoyed going to Sunday school. My family thought I was a little weird, but just because I wanted to ask questions about philosophy and what's the meaning, why are we here? And all those things really fed me and nourished me, whether it was singing or doing healing imagery with people to help them get on a strong, healing path for themselves. And lastly, one of the other ways that I live and embody my spirituality is something called synchronicity. It's a concept that many, many more people are admitting to experiencing. It's expecting miracles and coincidence to frequently show up. That's called being a high frequency coincidencer. And it's recognizing that there's powerful, invisible realities that surround us always. So when we're open to being open, we're more likely to experience more and more of these gifts. So my story, MArisa, is just like yours, except we're daughters from another mother, and we have different faith traditions and different geography and different circumstances. But there's something that really resonated with me when I read Chronically Fabulous, because your story is anchored in faith. So in my case, I was growing up as a young Jewish girl, and then a mother and a daughter who was facing many, many medical challenges, cancer, the sudden death of my brother, my oldest son being catastrophically ill, and then my beloved father having 5 strokes in 9 years. But I have a funny story to share, which gets at the universality. I hired this brilliant actress, Lisa Honig. She lives in Chicago, to play me as she did the recording for the audiobook. So we had an hour and a half Zoom session where we recorded the pronunciation of all the Jewish words, like rugala, which is a flaky pastry, or challah, which is the ceremonial bread that we have on the Jewish Sabbath, and some of the prayers and rituals that my family did through different times. So I'm listening to this recording and I'm crying because it's embarrassing to admit, but Lucy does a much better version of Lisa than I do, and I'm loving it. And I'm listening to her. She's singing this prayer to my son, and I'm tucking him in for bed. And she says, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echu. It sounded like she sneezed, and that wasn't the last word in the prayer. Well, I started laughing, like convulsive laughter, because, she's not Jewish and that she thought it chew. Okay, so it's just funny. But the point is that, on a serious note, that religion is a very funny thing, because if someone's more religious than you are, chances are it might make you feel less than, or it might create this like different power balance or put you on the defensive. But It doesn't have to be that way because everyone has access to this. So whether you're watching a beautiful sunset or listening to music, I wanted to show people that you could add positive rituals into your daily life. You don't have to go to India to the Taj Mahal. You don't have to go to a fancy ashram and get like fancy yoga clothes. There's simple, simple things that you can do where you'll feel an immediate emotional and physical and mental shift that can really help you in the darkest moments. And that's why I was really authentic and honest in my book about putting in my personal stories, because even though your tradition and your religion would be totally different than mine, some of the hundreds and hundreds of comments I've gotten from people in different countries, from different backgrounds are, your story resonated with me because even though I'm Hindu or even though I'm totally atheist, I could relate to this, this, and this. And for other people, it just sort of ignited an opportunity for them to think about things that give them sanctity, give them meaning, and make them feel that they can endure and move forward. And it reminds me of one of my favorite quotations. This is from Rabbi Hillel, who lived at 10 BCE, before the Common Era, 110 BCE. But he said, if I'm only for myself, who will be for me? And sorry, let me start that again. So for me, faith is the foundation. And it reminds me of the quotation of one of my favorite Jewish sources, which is Rabbi Hillel. And he said, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? But if I'm only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? And one of the best things about this global pandemic is that people are now talking about mental illness and emotional, issues and feeling unstable, and that the stigma is lessened somewhat as society and the media are letting us talk about these things instead of trying to shove them into some corner and just not shed light on them. So thankfully, I hope that my stories will inspire you to see that everyone is going through difficulties. And yet often we just see the outsides of people. We see their Instagram posts, or we see like the, smile. But basically what I've learned in my years is that my vulnerability is my strength. So I appreciate that when we can connect with each other in authentic and honest ways and wholehearted ways, and see the kindness in someone else in a waiting room, or see the generosity of someone who's helping you or your loved one go through a difficult situation. When this happens, soul is encountering soul, and that common humanity and radiance can shine through. And that really allows us to feel that love can transcend pain.
Absolutely. One of the things I love about your memoir is that there are so many themes throughout it that are relatable, whether you're chronically ill, whether you're a caregiver. You may not fall into either one of those categories, but you may be someone that is just going through a really difficult season. So there are pieces in your book that everyone's going to be able to relate to in some way. And you are very authentic in it and very raw in some areas. And I think people get a really genuine viewpoint of who you are, how you love people. We often hear, like in the chronic illness community, about people who are chronically ill becoming advocates. But I really like to shed stories on those who are healthy but are caregivers, because you go through so much as a caregiver. Your experience is completely different than ours. Sometimes we don't understand what a caregiver goes through. And you as a caregiver, you have this heart to just give back to people that are chronically ill, who are going through a tough time. So in your memoir, Soaring Into Strength, Love Transcends Pain, which for everyone watching will be available on August 29th. I just want to ask you, what if you had to pick, because there's so many, but if you had to pick a message or two that you are hoping to send through this book to those who have chronic illness, to those who are caregivers, to those who are just having a really hard season, which I think basically describes everyone for the past 2 years with COVID. And what is that message?
The message is that love transcends pain. So whether it was my mother advocating, demanding that the doctors do a 5th stem cell harvest on my daddy, pulverizing his pelvis, but that was the only way he was going to live, and insisting they do it. So they got the million cells that then they could put back into his body so that he did in fact live for 19 more years. Or walking on the beach next to my brother after he went through a major crisis, just walking next to each other, side by side, and knowing that my presence was enough. My presence was a healing presence. I didn't have to say anything. I was there. One of my favorite mottos is never give up. And another is, you are much stronger than you can imagine. And you already know this, because when we let others in, and this as being part of the Lupus Foundation of New England, that when we let others in, we really reduce our sense of isolation. We appreciate that we're better together. And that way we don't have to suffer alone. So just this morning, to quote a friend and mentor, Chip Connolly, he was talking about collective effervescence. It's a real thing. It's a scientifically proven and validated thing. And he says, it's the magic that occurs when people's sense of ego or separation just dissolves, and it's replaced by a communal sense of joy. And being part of a collective, as you so wisely are, that also helps you to know and to experience that love can transcend pain.
Absolutely. It's funny because people will come to me and be like, thank you so much for starting this community. And I say to them, like, this community saved me also. So it wasn't, it's not one-sided. It continually keeps you going when you have that many people and you're all encouraging and loving one another. So working in the publishing and book industry, which is what I do, it's, something that you often hear a lot is, describe your book to me in a sentence or two. But I like to take it another step further. And I always ask people, if you could describe your book in one word, what would it be?
It would be transformative. Soaring Into Strength, Love Transcends Pain. It's all about transformation. Reading these stories, you're going to cheer for the characters. You're going to cheer them on. You're going to fall in love with them. And this is going to create a positive cascading shift inside of you. It's alchemy. It's magic. And then when that happens, you're going to be so motivated to become the heroine and hero of your life and the lives of those for whom you are caregiving.
Well, Lisa Honig Buksbaum, I am so happy that you were here and that you did this interview with us. And I want you to give everyone an opportunity that's listening. One, tell them how they can follow Soaring Words, or maybe even possibly get involved. And then also, where can they pick up your new memoir, Soaring Into Strength, Love Transcends Pain?
So I'm so excited to say this because it's been a long time in writing the book and editing the book and getting the book ready. But the Soaring Into Strength book is ready in hardcover and paperback. The electronic book, the ebook, and the audiobook, they're all on Amazon and all other outlets electronically on the internet. And then if you type in Soaring Into Strength, you'll find them, it'll pop up. And please tell your independent bookstore in your community and your favorite bookstores in your community and your library to purchase the book, to carry the book, so we could really take the message forward to all the people that need it. And lastly, after you read the book, I hope that you'll share it generously with your family and friends and someone that you know that could really need that message, to let them know that they're not alone, to let them know that strength and greatness resides inside of them, and to let them know that love transcends pain.
Wonderful. And what about Soaring Words? How can someone learn more about your nonprofit?
So we have a lot of URLs. You can go to soaringwords.org, and here's a list of all of our social media. And here's a list of all the books' social media. We're on all the channels. We're out there. We have lots of videos and audio stories from the book, and poignant and memorable stories from the book that we'll be sharing daily and weekly to inspire you to never give up?
I remember one of the video links in the book is of a young girl and takes you to, I think, a Vimeo page, and just hearing her share some of her story. And it's just really neat. I always like to see when someone's dream actually, comes to fruition and you're seeing it in action. It's so awesome to just actually watch it. So to just see her share her story, and she's really young, and I believe she was dealing with cancer, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
So those are just really amazing things that you get to see through Soaring Words. So, all right, Lisa. Well, I want to thank you again. If there's anything that you wanted to add, I will give you the opportunity.
I just want to thank you, Marisa. It's been a pleasure to be with you today, and all the fans, people who know you and love you and respect you so much for all that you do every day as a champion and just a warrior for serenity and for healing and wholeness. You inspire me. And for everyone listening, I hope you will enjoy my book, Soaring Into Strength, Love Transcends Pain. And I just want you to know that I'm sending you strength and love. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. And thank you to everyone that's here and has been watching this interview. Definitely go and check out Lisa's new memoir, Soaring Into Strength, Love Transcends Pain, available everywhere, August 29th. And check out her nonprofit, Soaring Words. Thank you again, Lisa.